Okay, well, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you all. Um, well, today I'm just going to dredge out an old teaching. Well, I don't know. Well, it's pretty old, I suspect, but I don't use it much. But it's we have this saying in Zen that Buddhas don't seek, and I thought I would just like to explore that a little bit. It might come as a surprise, maybe not. But Buddhas, that is, awakened people and enlightened people, do not seek. And there's a reason for this that we'll explore now this morning. And it's not that they do it for some reason, it's just that they just don't seek. And maybe I can give you some sense as to why that might be the case. So we have, I can look at a couple of little pieces of teaching here from Zen Master Foyan. And this appears in the Zen Essence book, translations of Zen Masters by Thomas Cleary. But here we have Master Foyan, and he said, if you seek, how is that different from pursuing sound and form? If you don't seek, how are you different from earth, wood, or stone? Okay, so if you seek, how's that different from pursuing sound and form? If you don't seek, then how are you different from earth, stone, and wood? Kind of an interesting question. And he suggests that we seek without seeking, but I don't know if that's particularly helpful. But it is if you just consider, if you're seeking for something, if you're looking for something, there's an assumption there in your mind. And what would that assumption be? Well, there's an assumption that there's something to seek, or that there is something outside, out there, beyond the windows of my senses, and outside outside my mind somewhere. There's something to go after, something that I don't have now, and that I must find. And this is very normal for us. I think most of us come to Zen in this way. I think that was pretty much, I didn't have a real conscious focus on that at all when I first wasn't, searching in this way. I remember I had a cousin. She's much older and wiser than I when I was a young man, and I was beginning to really pursue Eastern thought, and particularly Taoism and Zen. And she described me as a seeker, and I don't know how I reacted to it at that time. I probably maybe accepted that, but then later she described me that again many years later, and described me in that way. And I said, no, that's not really it. Not really seeking. Because if we're seeking, then we have this idea, this belief that there's something out there to go after. And I was pretty well into my studies and practice with Zen by the time I came upon that passage that Buddhas do not seek. But already by this time, I think I already understood that, because I wasn't really too surprised at that time because it was obvious. Of course, they do not seek. To seek, actually, this is the way that we keep ourselves confused and blind to reality and to what is going on here, because we have fully plunged into our belief, our assumption that I am something apart from this experience. And there's stuff out there in that experience that I want to get, not noticing that you already have it, so to speak. Except there isn't any you in this experience either, if you look very carefully, or whatever it is that we feel is me. Search that out, see if you can find it. What would that be? And if we do, and we're very honest about it, and also very careful, and if we continue to examine, are we making assumptions here? Because if we start out, and it is an assumption, it is a belief that there was a world, an objective world out there, apart from me, apart from my senses, and it contains real, definite things, and there's thoughts and feelings as well, and sensations and smells and sights and sounds, all of this, and there's something behind all of these impressions, these perceptual impressions that we have. But you've never had any experience of such things. If you look carefully, you say, well, yes, I have. I see them. I see trees. I see dogs. Yes, I but if you look carefully, that's what's experienced. And in fact, it's probably not even really, well, it's not, I shouldn't say probably, it's not really what we might call a dog or a tree or whatever else, a pain in the knee, a headache, the sense of the feeling of love or something like this, anything at all. But if you look carefully, what is experienced isn't in an object. It isn't in something that isn't you, that is separate from you. It is the experience of anything at all is already fully intimate. There's no separation. There's nothing over there. Because the impression, the taste, the sound, the touch, the feel, the thought is intimately experienced right from the very start. What is there to go after? If we see this, if we realize this, if we realize the actual experience of this moment, then what is there to go after? But a thought impression, a thought object, a mind object. But it is right there in the mind itself. And so it's for this reason, for people who wake up to the immediate direct experience of reality, they don't seek. They're not looking for something, because the directly obvious for such a person that this is it. It is right here, nothing to go after. Of course, there are the appearances of things out there, and there are the appearances of things to go after. And there might be things in these appearances that are worth us taking care of. There definitely is that. But why? Why should we bother with things such as that? Well, it is important that we keep this experience right here settled, and no need to make it full of things. Fo Yan has another little teaching here that I'd like to read as well. So, and he's the guy that, remember, I just said that. He said, if you seek, then how is that different from pursuing sound and form? Yeah, because that's what we're doing. We're pursuing sound and form. And if you don't seek, how is this different from earth and wood and stone? Yeah, so that was Fo Yan. Well, he also has another little teaching here. He tells us about the second ancestor of Zen. This would be Hui Ka, I believe. And he says the second ancestor of Zen used to give talks whenever he happened to, oh, get my eyes are going on me here. kind of a family trait. As we get older, we lose our vision. Um, I'm sorry. Let me just pick this up. Yeah, so he said the second ancestor of Zen used to give talks wherever he happened to be, and all who heard him attained true awareness. He didn't establish any slogans or talk about causes and effects of practice and realization. In his time, there was a certain meditation teacher who sent a top disciple to listen in on the Zen ancestor. The disciple never came back. The meditation teacher was furious and took the occasion of a congress to upbraid his former disciple for disloyalty. The former disciple said, "My perception was originally true, but it was distorted by a teacher." Later, someone asked the Zen master, "Where is my power of perception?" The Zen master said, "It is not obtained from a teacher." This is the way to attain Zen, an ancient said. The way is always with people, but people themselves chase after things. The way is always with people. It's always with you. You have it now. This way of awakening, the awakening itself, is always with you. You are always having an immediate, it's not mediated by anything, an immediate, direct experience of reality all the time. You don't need words, you don't need definitions, you don't need explanations, you don't need somebody telling you this. You can see this, taste this, feel this, know this for yourself. And probably, if you're settled enough, even when I read that little passage there, the way is always with people, but people themselves chase after things. But there might be something in there, because you do know this. The way is always, you already are having an immediate direct experience of reality. It couldn't be otherwise. And there's probably something in you that senses that when you hear that. Maybe you don't fully feel like you understand that, perhaps. But it could very well, for you, people who come to talks like this, you probably already have a sense of that, a taste of that. And I would say pay attention to that sense and to that taste, because you do have it. I can't give it to you. My teacher didn't give it to me. The Buddhas can't give it to us. It isn't going to come from a book. Doesn't mean that reading books and getting acquainted with the teachings of various teachers isn't helpful. It certainly is. It might direct our attention to what it is maybe that we need to be paying attention to. But the awakening itself isn't something that gets handed off. It isn't a thing. It isn't, something that you can pursue in sound and form, as Foyan said. Soon as it's something formed, a thought, an impression, if you take what I've just read here now and you form it into something, and you think, and you do that because you're trying to figure this out, it's very natural. That's how we normally go about in our everyday lives. Yeah, that makes sense. Very functional and useful. But that will never take us out of where we can stand back and just see the whole thing here, what's actually taking place. It is not something outside of you, So, so here we have this this teacher then, who the second ancestor told us about it, and then because I guess the second ancestor was I don't know, having an effect on a lot of people or whatever, perhaps. So this he's called him a teacher of meditation here. Sent out one of his best students here to meet up with the second ancestor, and but the disciple that he sent out, he never came back. he, he met somebody who directly could point to reality, what the problem is here with us. And it wasn't through following whatever it was, maybe that first teacher, his meditation teacher, was directing him in teaching him meditation. And it's kind of a giveaway that the meditation teacher couldn't do what Huika was doing, just from the way he reacted, And so the former disciple told him, the teacher became furious, and then and he took the occasion to upbraid his former disciple for disloyalty. Well, the very fact that he's even thinking of disloyalty, someone leaves him, and now the teacher gets upset because, that was a disloyal student. You were a faithful student of mine, a very good student of mine, and now you've left me. And I'm mad at you for being disloyal. But this isn't anybody who has their eyes open and sees this way, isn't expecting loyalty from anybody. They're not expecting anything from anybody. They're independent, just as we all are, but they know it. If it's a true teacher, they're not going to be upset if you leave or something like this. Well, they might feel sorry for you, perhaps, because maybe they realize, well, there really is something here that you're not picking up on yet. You stick around, it might help you. But it's not a personal thing at all. It isn't. It's like you can picture some government officials who demand loyalty from their underlings, and get very upset, if they don't remain loyal, as if this was about loyalty to them instead of to the nation, say, something like that. We've seen examples of this. And look how sorrowful the whole picture is under those circumstances. Well, that kind of thing cannot happen with someone who's awake, with a true teacher. It cannot happen because they don't see it in this way at all. And a true teacher doesn't really have any stake in you. And you really shouldn't have a stake in the teacher. At least at some point, the teacher is going to try to help you become free of that. But the way you'll become free of it is for you yourself to wake up and to see this for yourself. And you don't get it from the teacher. So, this is kind of an important thing here that Foyan is pointing out here, I think. So, so we have this meditation teacher who became furious because his student left him and went over to another teacher and stayed there, So, but then so he upbraided the former disciple for displaying or for disloyalty. And the former disciple said, "My perception was originally true." And this is what Huika was probably able to show him, apparently in very short order, a very good teacher. And the student realized at that point that they have this. Maybe they didn't fully realize it, but they could sense it. And you can sense it too. You know the truth already, but you have to watch your busy mind, your grasping mind, your desiring mind. And particularly when that desire and that grasping is applied toward, I want to wake up, I want enlightenment, or something along those lines. Just forget that. Because that's like what Foyan says elsewhere, it's like pursuing sound and forms, chasing after things. That's our ordinary way. When you want to figure out, you go to school and you're learning this trade or this profession, whatever it might be, and the various things that you have to learn to use and understand and all that. Yeah, it's very functional and useful in all kinds of ways. But you can study all of those things as much as you want and as broadly as you want, as you can. You still will not. There's nothing in that that will bring you to truth, opening your eyes so you can see for yourself. Doesn't mean it can't happen, because it can happen spontaneously anywhere. But there's nothing in that kind of. And that's useful teaching. We need to go to school and learn different things. I'm not berating this in any way whatsoever. It's just that our concern here is, my concern with you is just simply, I just want to help you wake up. But what's involved is different. It's uniquely, and I mean that word in its truest sense. Sometimes people talk about, well, it's sort of unique, or it's kind of unique, or something. There's no such thing as kind of unique. Unique means this is it. There's no other form of this. This is uniquely different from anything else we might pursue. This does not belong to the conceptual, in which there are many ways, many pursuits, many, of all sorts. This is perceptual, in which there's just this one thing. And either we see this, and you do see it, but we realize we see this, or we don't. And so this is different, and it is unique, but it is different. And it isn't, I'm not trying to get you to learn something. I don't want you to walk away every time I give a talk or something. I really don't want you to walk away holding something. But I'm trying to help you in a very broad way to just kind of loosen all the things that you are gripping, so you can actually see what's immediately, at hand here. So anyway, so the disciple went, he never came back. Yeah. And then the former teacher upbraided him for his disloyalty. And then the student said, well, my perception was originally true. Your perception is originally true. There's nothing I can do. There was nothing my teacher could do to change that, or to make it better, or to improve it, or anything like that at all. We can do things like that in the conceptual realm, where we're conceptualizing everything and we're holding ideas and thoughts and objects and whatever else, and learning how to control them and manipulate them and adapt them to various things and make new versions of them and all that sort of thing. And that's pretty much our whole world and our life within it. But that in no way brings us to just seeing overall what this really is. And that's something that is uniquely different, and no one can hand it to you. A teacher can't hand it to you. So later, someone asked the Zen master, said, well, so where is my power of perception then? And the Zen master said, it is not obtained from a teacher. It is not obtained from anyone or anything. You don't get it from. To get it means that you've been without it, and now maybe you can acquire it. That's not the case here. That might be the case with ideas and possessions that you might have, and bits of knowledge about how certain things work and stuff like that. But that doesn't apply to the immediate direct experience of reality. You're never without this. You've never been without it. It's nothing to acquire, So he asked, so where is my power of perception then? And he says, it's not obtained from a teacher. It's not something that can be handed off. That's why I say, like, after I talk and that, I don't particularly want you to walk away with some particular, well, you might have a nice idea about this or that. I hope it would be a nice idea, as opposed to, say, a lousy one or one that's going to trip you up. I certainly don't want to do that. But what it is that I want to help you with is not something that you can walk away as if you possess it. It's more just a matter of, I see it more as, I'm just trying to start to minimize any kind of confusion that might be binding you. And no matter what your confusion is, and you're all different from each other and that sort of thing, but the way in which we're bound is pretty much alike, and these things can be loosened no matter which way we're bound with whatever. And that's a characteristic of this kind of teaching. It seems to apply universally, even though we all have different things that it might be affecting. But to the extent that we might be gripping tightly to various ideas, thoughts, beliefs, whatever, inclinations and pensions and stuff like this, to the extent we're doing that, we may or may not be as open as another to what's being pointed out here. That can vary, that can change, and it can change within yourself from moment to moment, let alone from person to person. But still, it's affected in just the same way, because the way in which we are bound, we can be bound by anything, but the way in which we're bound is all the same. And it is from us gripping a view. And we've probably gripped many views. But so anyway, but so where is my power of perception? It's right here. You're born with it. It's just right from the beginning. It's not obtained from a teacher or from a book or from anywhere else. It's not obtained. It's innate. You already have this ability to, I don't even know what ability, what. You already have enlightenment itself, so to speak. But of course, actually, it isn't really you, because that's a constructed thing too. But a full understanding of the nature of reality and what's taking place here is available all the time. So, Fo Yan ends there. He says that this is the way to attain Zen. Then, he said, you don't obtain it from a teacher. This is the way to attain Zen. An ancient said, the way is always with people. That's what I've been pointing out here. But people themselves chase after things. This is what you need to take note of. Start noticing this, particularly if your interest is in waking up. If you're chasing after something, realize that this isn't what's required here. You're looking for an idea. You're trying to figure out maybe what I'm saying here. You want to get some idea of it rather than just hear it, what's being pointed out. Or when you read Fo Yan or whatever else, you just read it. I wouldn't spend too much time thinking about it. Then we might have questions, and this is good. If you have a questioning mind, that could easily lead to a seeking an answer. That would be our usual way. But in doing that, as you pick up things and you think, well, maybe this is it, and you stay with it for a while, and maybe you reject it. Maybe you make it just part of your belief system or whatever. But all of this is dangerous in the sense of it'll block you and keep you from waking up. This is why we don't wake up. We find it difficult to wake up. So this is something uniquely different. It isn't about pursuing something that you can grasp, an idea or whatever else. It doesn't involve anything that you're not already engaged in right now, which is this living, breathing reality. And it's just simply a matter of kind of not talking to ourselves, not explaining it. And then at some point, you'll just see the nature of whatever it is you're looking at. You'll see the nature of whatever it is you're listening to or hearing. The nature of whatever it is you touch, and the nature of whatever it is you is supposed to be. It isn't something particular. It is that touching, that hearing, that tasting. Okay, but this is not something that comes to us as an idea. It's the same thing as I use that analogy of the orange juice, tasting the orange juice. And it isn't a matter of figuring out the taste of orange juice. Oh, I get it now. No, it's not like that at all. Either you taste it or you don't. Well, actually, you do taste it. In the case of reality, we're always tasting it, but we don't realize it. You could be just kind of absentmindedly sipping on some orange juice, not even thinking. Your mind's preoccupied with other things, and you're not even aware of what you're doing. And that's kind of what our problem is here. We're so busy with this and that and one thing or another. We don't just taste, hear, see, feel, the direct experience itself. It isn't something particular. And like the taste of orange juice, though, you know it. When you taste it, you know it, but you can't describe it. Why, you can start offering words, kind of tangy, fruity smell, things like this. But you'll never describe it to someone who's never tasted it in such a way that they'll know the taste. You can't do it. Of course, you don't need to, because in this case, they already taste the orange juice, so to speak, because we're not talking about orange juice, we're talking about reality. But it's the same situation for them. No matter how they're entangled with various things, it would be a totally different situation than your confusion and entanglements. There might be some overlap there or whatever, but it's going to be distinctly different. And yet it's the same problem. And the same way to resolve it is just simply to be open to it and to taste it. It's universal. Because our direct perceptual experience is universal. It is identical to that of a Buddha, of an awakened person. There's no difference there. This is how it is that we can finally know awakening. It isn't something that's unique to certain people or that they have special talents or whatever. It isn't that at all. It's available to all of us. But it is a matter of getting serious, getting clear on kind of what the problem is here. What is my problem exactly? Get kind of clear on that, and then start catching yourself when you're explaining things to yourself. You're trying to create a view for yourself about Zen or Buddhism or enlightenment or any number of other things as well. A lot of those things might be functional and useful in your everyday life, yeah. But when it comes to this matter of knowing what's going on, this just simply doesn't help you. This is the confusion itself. And then there's another passage by a different guy here. Let's see, what time is it? Maybe. then I'll pause and just see if you have any questions or anything. But this kind of applies somewhat to it's a different way of this, different teacher here, different way of looking at this maybe a little bit. It's after giving some consideration to what Fo Yan just gave us. This is Zen Master Yuan Tso. And here he says, the mountains, rivers, earth, grasses, trees, and forests are always emanating a subtle, precious light, day and night, always emanating a subtle, precious sound, demonstrating and expounding to all people the unsurpassed ultimate truth. It is just because you miss it right here where you are, or avoid it even as you face it, that you are unable to attain actual use of it. This is why Buddhism came into being. This is why Buddhism came into being. It's not Buddha Dharma, but Buddhism. And this is why Buddhism came into being, with its many expedients and clever explanations, with temporary and true, immediate and gradual, something called sudden and gradual, half and full, partial and complete teachings. These are all simply means of stopping children from whining, he says. So all these teachings, Zen is very iconoclastic. And here's an example of it right there. But just all of these things that we'll build up, put on our way. Pretty soon people are wearing robes and doing rituals. And we don't do a lot of this at Dharma Field. But that's really because I want to get to the point of let's just look at where we're confused and not get sidetracked by a lot of fancy stuff. Ordinary stuff all over again. And the certifications and the this and the that and the that. And it's the trappings of confused minds. get to the heart of what the matter is. Just point at it, direct people's attention to it. This is it, and over again. But people, don't easily pick up on this. You have to hear it many times, perhaps, and come back to it many times. But you do have to do this. You do have to get clear in your mind. And it's not something special you have to do. You have to start noticing what you are doing. That is being caught up, that's generating the entanglements and being caught up in the entanglements. Start noticing that. And how so much of it isn't urgent, it isn't necessary. But you have to do this. And that's what this way is. But then we have, Buddhism came along here, he says, with its many expedients and clever explanations, and the rites and the rituals and stuff like this, and different ways of talking about these teachings. But he says these are all simply means of stopping children from whining. Well, I don't know, that might be going a little too far. But my teacher, Katagiri Roshi, he would talk about Zen candy or Zen toys. And sometimes we can encounter various kinds of meditation practices that have a lot of toys, a lot of candy, a lot of distractions. And then also maybe we can set up, even in Zen, you can set up ways where you graduate from, say figuring out one koan, and well, if you figure it out, you're in real trouble. But if you see it, that's better. But but still, you're just kind of marching along, going up the ladder. If that isn't characteristic of the conceptual, I don't know what is. But in Dogen's way, it's immediate. If you want to attain suchness, then practice suchness without delay, says Dogen. That's in his Fukan Zazengi. And he says, cease from practice based on intellectual understanding, following words and pursuing after speech. And learn the backward step that turns your light inwardly to illuminate just this, right here. It says yourself, but that could be misunderstood. Just big self, true self, reality, which isn't you, isn't me. It's just this. So anyway, but so that's how we end up with these teachings and a lot of different teachers and traditions and things like this. And I would just say be very careful of those things and the trappings that go with it. This is very simple. We have people who, in the past, Bodhidharma, of course, Bodhidharma is probably mythical, but just goes into a cave, a shallow cave, and sits before a wall for 9 years because he was already awake when he did that. But it's something very, very simple. It's not elaborate. It's not something difficult to figure out. It doesn't require a lot of your intellect or any particular talent. It's just what it requires is heart and determination and clarity of what you need to do, and then to do it. I think a lot of you probably know that I'm a writer, at least I was. Maybe I've done my last book finally, I don't know. But in writing, when people find out that I write, very often they say, oh yes, and I love to write, and I'd like to write, and I want to write, and I've got some ideas for some books and things. And I've heard this many times. But the thing is about if you want to be a writer, what you have to do, what it all comes down to is that you have to write. And so I've met many people who want to be a writer, but what do you write? How much time a day do you spend writing? And oh, well, no, but they're maybe dreaming up some marvelous story or novel or whatever it could be, anything, But if you want to be a writer, you have to write. And, you know, if whatever the profession might be, you name it, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but you have to do this. Well, this in like manner, it's a little different in a sense because you're not doing something particular in a sense, other than watching your mind. But if you want to wake up, you have to wake up. And that means you have to be paying attention. Be paying attention to what's going on right here in your own heart and mind, and start to notice when the insanity or the craziness or the confusion or the complications start getting woven in to whatever's going on in your mind. If this is something that you're involved with professionally or something like that, that's fine. Take care of those things. But when it comes to just life unfolding here, and I said, what's going on? Um, there's really no need for that. That's something you need to look at. And if you look at it, the complications will start to drop away. But you have to be aware of that. And maybe just see how that, in some ways, might differ from what you might be doing in other parts of your life that do require you to gain some skills and know-how and stuff like that. But in the end, if your mind does become more clear and flowing and moving, it will even assist you in the practical everyday world of our conceptualized life. So anyway, but maybe I think I probably said everything I was going to say today. So maybe I'll just ask you now if you have any questions or anything about what we were looking at this morning. So I don't see any hands. Maybe after a talk like this, you're not inclined to ask anything. Huh?
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah,
Judy.
Judy, hi.
I'm Judy. Yeah, you said at the beginning that you do not seek, and you said then there is no you. Could you say a little bit more about about there is no you, please?
Yeah, well, in seeing that there's nothing to seek, then there's also no seeker, and but the sense of uh, the sense that we have of that I am, I exist, and I like this, I don't like that, I'm good at this, I'm not so good at that, or I like that thing or that person or whatever, and I don't. All of these kinds of things, the preferences that come along with that. Um, if we look carefully, and this is over time, not you can't do this in an instant, but every time you might capture, excuse me, or catch some sense that we might have of well, these entanglements that I was just talking about, you want to kind of watch that. You can look at that, and you can see a number of things if we just kind of dispassionately look at that. First of all, the thing that's concerning us so much there, whether we're related or whether we're upset or whatever, uh, it there's nothing about it that you uh, can capture, that you can take hold of. You can begin to see this. At the same time, you will also begin, you can begin, it might start to soften at least this solid impression that we have of myself here looking at that or thinking about that or feeling that or whatever it might be. This also becomes kind of softer and more general. And so there isn't any particular person who is seeking. There isn't anything to be sought. Gradually, these things, well, here's a sudden and gradual that Master Yuan So at the very end here was talking about. It's one of these different ways of characterizing the teaching. This stuff comes along. But there are these different aspects that will show up. And one of them is that there may be gradual shifts and changes and awarenesses in your mind that will change. But then there'll also be at some point where suddenly we can realize the whole thing, and where it doesn't seem to involve time at all. But I wouldn't think about any of these things. Don't grasp any of these things. Just pointing this out to give you some sense that there's something going on here that we normally aren't tuned into. And that's up. But what we can do is just then start tuning into what it is that is taking place. We've very easily and very often, sometimes just exclusively, tune into that out there, whatever it might be. You know, what we rarely do, and maybe we should at least give this as much attention, is start paying attention to our own mind and watching, you know, where this sense of self seems to reside. And it doesn't really reside anywhere, but it seems to reside here. And then we can notice the kind of the grasping and you know, the drivenness of it. You know, that we're driven to do this or to run from that, or you know, and the complications that arise from this. And in particular, we can start to notice how these complications really grow and get entangled very quickly when we're not watching the mind. And most of us pay very little attention to that. And that's why we end up with these very complicated and entangled minds. And then we try to use that to figure out our way back to some sort of peace and enlightenment or something like this. But it doesn't work that way. It works in just noticing the entanglements and where these are coming from. And also you can notice that most of it, I won't say all of it, but most of it is based on sheer fantasy or wishful thinking or irrational fear and a number of things like that, not based on any sort of objective reality at all. So it's kind of like we waste our entire lives with this instead of really seeing what is actually at hand. So this is very important stuff. But it's a matter of just turning our attention to it, having some sense of what's going on here and how we keep entangling ourselves in confusion. And just see if we can begin to stop this. Our practice of meditation, of just settling the mind, is very helpful in this way. But of course, now if I say something like that, it sounds like I'm saying, well, then if you do this, it will help you with that. And that's not really the way to see it, because it isn't exactly. So that's how our conceptual mind will put it together. But perceptually, it is that, well, this is that. The settled mind is that. And it's a very clear mind. But as Dogen said, if you want to practice this and practice, take it up right now. It's not something to do in the future. It's like the person wants to be a writer. I want to be a writer. Well, then write. You know, if you want to be a writer, don't talk to me about your ambition to write or something. If what do you write? Well, no, but I've always wanted to do it. You know, and it's up to you. I mean, if you want to do this or that or the next thing, but the same thing applies if you want to wake up. Get some sense of what that is. And if I want to wake up, but I never look at myself or what I'm doing in my mind or how crazy this is, or start doing that. And then also, like with our meditation, we do this, we start to learn to do this without judgment. We don't judge ourselves. We don't judge others. It's a matter of just see what is actually happening in your heart, in your mind, in your surroundings, in your ambitions or your fears or whatever it might be, your relationships, all of this. But just look, well, without judgment of yourself or of others. And then you catch yourself judging and things, and that's fine. This goes on with us, but just start to notice that to the extent we begin to watch the mind will start to behave slowly at first, maybe. But this is what we need to do. And that judgment thing is very important, to just, and be very, very forgiving. Don't excuse like your own misbehavior or something, or some unfairness in the way you treated somebody or whatever. Don't excuse that, but don't beat yourself up over it either. But if you can, if there's something there to make amends for, whatever, yes, just take care of that. Why? Because that will help to settle your mind. That's why. We can say, well, it's because God would like me to do that, or that would be a good thing to do. You can start to see, no, the focus then starts to become, notice what agitates the mind and avoid that if you can. And we can also notice what settles the mind, quiets the mind. And this quieting of the mind, the settled mind and the quieting mind, is the meditation itself. It isn't the meditation brings us to this. trains us to do this. As Dogen says, if you want to attain this, then do it now. Just do it. Of course, we first sit down in a meditation. I'm assuming most of you now, probably all of you, perhaps, have tried some meditation. And remember the first time you try something like that? I remember. Boy, how noisy my mind was. It was just, or particularly the first time I did a sesshin. My God, oh, I thought I can't take this, But what I didn't realize is that, well, it isn't going to go on forever. Little by little, that cacophony of sound echoing around in my mind, and voices, and I don't know what all is, all the different things. It starts to settle out. Never goes fully quiet, though, at least not for more than a few minutes, it seems. But that's not the goal. Sometimes we think within my mind's got to be just, I sit in meditation and boing, I'm just, till the bell rings. And, oh, here I am. Not like that. That's called tuning out. That's called trance, and that's not what this is. This is about fully participating in the sound of the room and your posture, everything. Any thought, feelings coming up, just attending to that without judgment. That's all this is. But that in and of itself is this mind. And Doga says you want to practice this and you do it without delay. Yeah, you might not be very skilled at it at first, but that's what this is. Take it up. Don't measure yourself. Don't measure your progress. None of that. Don't be so busy. Just do this, and do it without calculation or judgment. If we do this, it'll be like walking in the mist, as Dogen uses that image too. Gradually, at some point, we might start to realize that our clothes are becoming damp, because we're walking in the mist. But never mind, keep walking. And the mist, in this case, would be analogous to mind is softening up, opening up, becoming less judgmental, more present with what is actually taking place. Do not think that this is happening because you do meditation. That's ordinary thinking again. I will do this and it'll cause that and create that. This is strictly right out of the conceptual. And that's not the mind of awakening. So I don't know, did that help, Judy?
Yes, it does a lot.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Is there anything else? I'm looking for the blue hands here, but you could also just ask as Judy did if you have a question. Okay, well, I guess that might be it. So thank you all. It was good to see you, and I look forward to seeing you again sometime. Thank you.